Hello and welcome to Quilt Like an Artist. This week's quilt is called Marta, and it is another panel quilt with a simple improv snowball block. So I started with these 2 yards of spoonflower fabric that I designed. I will put the link here for you. It'll also be in the description. And then I added cherrywood fabric, one of my very favorites, to add another level of richness to this quilt. I will also list these fabrics in the description for you. And here's a close-up shot if you just want to pause it and write down the numbers. You can order online with cherrywood, or you can order from your local quilt shop. The first thing I did was to cut apart the 6-inch squares from the spoonflower fabric, and then I put them in groups of different values and lined them up. Then I added and cut 6-inch squares of the cherrywood fabric and matched them up as well. The first thing you want to do is stack the fabrics right sides up on top of each other, and you want to line them up. They don't have to be absolutely perfect, but pretty close. Now you can stack, in this quilt I stacked 4, and at times I stacked 5. And I'll show you the difference. With these I stacked 4, and you'll notice that 2 of the fabrics match in opposite corners. So there's actually 5 different sections to each block, and I'm using 4 fabrics. In these, I used 5 fabrics, so every corner is different in each block. And this is, it just depends on the effect you want. This sort of sprinkles the color throughout a little more. The other thing we might as well talk about right away is, because I'm cutting these corners improvisationally, I'm not measuring, I'm not using a template, I'm just whacking off the corner in an approximate size. You will notice that they do not match. What does match is the corner of the block, because I trim the block from a 6-inch, it's a 6-inch square to start. I trim it down to a 5-inch block. So I am able to match up the corners reasonably well, but I am not at all worried about matching up the corners of the snowball block. Now, if you do want them matched up, you're going to have to come up with a different way to do that. This improvisational way is the method I enjoy, so that is why I do it this way, and it does not bother me that they don't line up. So that's a individual choice you'll have to make. All right, here I am slicing through all of the layers, placing the top layer corner aside, and then stitching the second layer to the first layer. And yes, I did use a ruler there, but I was not very careful about exactly where it laid on that corner. So that is where the variation comes. I did cut a whole bunch of them for this quilt without the ruler, and it worked just fine. So your preference. Some days I feel like a ruler, some days I don't. So I'm sewing each of the corners onto the bigger square, finger pressing and setting aside on my pressing mat. And then I like to press these all at the same time. So when I lay them on the pressing mat, I kind of stagger them like this. And yes, I have a very dusty iron. Now, when you go to sew these together, if you press them all in the same direction, like I just did, your seams will not nest. And because they don't really line up anyway for me, because I'm doing it improvisationally, it doesn't really matter. I didn't seem to have a big problem with any bulk doing it this way. But once again, if you do a different method for making the snowballs, you could press in opposite directions and all that quilty jazz. And now I'm repeating the same thing for the second corner. So how did I decide to do a snowball quilt, a snowball block for this quilt? Well, honestly, I was looking at the panel and I had all of the fabrics pinned up to the wall and I was like, I don't know, snowball quilt might look kind of cool. Maybe because it's winter here right now, I don't know. And then the next day, popped in my head again, snowball quilt. And when it popped in for the third day in a row, I'm like, okay, I'm doing the snowball quilt. So sometimes I will make a whole bunch of, different blocks and audition them by pinning them to the design wall. And this time it just kept popping in my mind, snowball quilt. So I just went with that. And we're going to repeat that for the third time. And I'm lining up the corners so that they're stacked nice and squarely on top of each other, especially the corner I'm going to cut. Not really even paying attention to the rest. I think when I went to the 5 layers instead of 4 layers is when I started using the ruler, just to reduce a little bit of the shift as you cut. I also put in a new blade. I think I prefer the 5 layers because you do get the fabrics a little bit more dispersed, but depending upon what you choose, like if you want a real, let's just say a dense dark area, and depending upon the number of fabrics you have, you might want to do less than that. You might want to do 4 or 3. You could do it in 2 if you wanted. Most snowball quilts are done in 2 colors, not 5. So it's all up to you. I would say experiment, play, look at what your fabrics are that you're working with, and just go from there. And this is the third set of corners. I don't usually show the pressing in most of my videos because my ironing board is actually behind me. Sometimes it's the small mat is next to me. And I would have to like move my camera every time and all of that. So I just kind of skipped that part, but I decided to cut my wool mat in half, and so that it would fit on this cutting board. And so that's why I'm showing you this. Now, maybe next time I'll remember to dust my iron off. I mean, really, who dusts their iron? Not something I learned from my mom. Maybe she did it and I just didn't know. I don't know. Do you dust your iron? Probably because it's black. It shows too. This was a very expensive iron. I think I paid $19.95 for it at Aldi. I had a really tiny one that I loved using for quilting, and was kind of one of those little travel ones that folds up. I love that thing, but it died on me. So I splurged and spent $19.95, and this thing has been going. Watch, just watch. I'll dust it and it'll go kaput. I'll let you know. Okay, we're gonna press the final corner here. And now it's time to trim. So I'm kind of lining up the diagonal line with the points of the block. I'm not sure how important that is, honestly. And then for the final one, I'm lining up the 5-inch lines. And there you have it. The first block is trimmed. And now I'm just going to do it to all of them, and I'm not going to make you watch. And once again, one of the reasons I really am starting to love working with these 6-inch squares of different fabrics is that you don't have a lot of waste. Here you can see my trimmings from these 4 blocks, 5 blocks, these 5 blocks. And yeah, that makes me really happy. Because I had these piled in by color, hue, and value, I sewed them in groups. So that is why you'll see like all of the darks together and the red, the warm colors together, and then the cool colors together. So I'm adding them to the design wall in those batches. And here I made the decision to move that blue polka dot or that turquoise polka dot down where it was on the panel. And I just continue to work in this way, kind of keeping them grouped by their values. At this point, I'm not even really thinking about the engineering or assembly. It should be fairly straightforward because I'm working with blocks. Here, I'm starting to assemble it. I've sewn the strip beneath the panel, and I've sewn the blocks together to the left, the brown ones, and stitched those to the panel. And with regard to making the size of the blocks fit the size of the panel, you're going to need to trim one or the other. You're going to need to trim the block or the panel to fit. Now, I didn't really figure that all out. I just started sewing them together, and you can see here I needed to trim one of the blocks. Now, will that bother me? I'm not sure. I could have added a wider border to the bottom of the panel as well. These are all choices that you make as you go. This shows I have the entire center section sewn together. So the panel to the right and to the left and beneath her are all stitched in place and trimmed according to that first trim of the dark black block. Now, as I sit with it, I'm feeling like the red snowball is a little too strong. So I move it around and eventually I take it out. And that feels better to me. Next, I have to figure out what to do with these 2 blocks because the full blocks are too big for the stripe above it. So I decide to stitch them together and sort of chop them off. And, this was something I tried and then didn't like it. So even though I didn't like it, I'm going to show you how I did it. So first thing is I folded the stripe in half and finger pressed it just to see where the center mark was. And then I lined it up with the block and decided to move that seam in to where that fold mark was. That way, when you open them both up, they would be the same width. You always got to try things. Trying things is how you figure out what you like and don't like, and what you want to repeat and what you don't want to repeat. So how did I know I didn't like it? Well, I looked at it from a distance. I looked at it from a medium distance. I looked at it close up, and I didn't like it in any of those three things. So I just removed it and I moved the stripe down. Really didn't like that, so I took that out. And then I took that whole top right chunk and moved it over to the left. Up until this point, I thought this is just going to be a relatively simple art quilt, and I'm just going to do the snowballs and the striped border and the panel. And this will be easy and fun. And that was my thinking. And then when this happened, I'm like, okay, I have to find something for that upper right corner. And I'm kind of running out of options. And then I looked to my left and saw this. And I know you've seen this in previous videos. And I thought, what if I put those leftovers from my previous quilt in this quilt? I have to admit, I got a little excited at this point, and I auditioned a couple of thread colors. Now, I don't have a lot of thread because I don't usually use colors, but because I was going to applique this on, I needed to find a color, which I did. And then I referred to my little chart for the satin stitch, set my machine up, and what I'm not showing you here is that this is my second attempt, because the first attempt, all you could see was the bobbin thread on top. The tension somehow had gotten wacky, and yeah, there was a little unsewing being done, and this time it went very smoothly till I got almost to the end, and then my thread broke, or my bobbin ran out. I don't remember actually which one it was, but anyway, in the end, I got it done and was very happy with the end result. And here's one more across the room from the sewing machine look at that last decision. And here she is, completely pieced. She's not quilted yet. I will probably get to that next week, but by that time I'll probably be on to something else. I'm really enjoying using these panels because it combines my desire to create mixed media art along with the quilting and the art quilting. So I am hoping to do more of these, and if this is something you are interested in seeing more of, let me know. I do have a landscape coming up, so I have ordered the fabrics and the panel for that, and that has a kind of an interesting story with it. So let me know what you think in the comments if you want to see more of these panel quilts. I'm calling them panel and piecing quilts. Once again, thank you for being here. I so appreciate it. I so appreciate that you're here to the very end, and I hope you'll do all those YouTubey things. You know what I'm talking about. Share and like and all of that. And I will see you next week with something new.